Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Underground Professor Freedom Studies radio blog, where we talk about some politics, some history, some religion, some current events, and a whole lot of common sense. We are live each Thursday and Sunday nights, 7 to 8 p.m. Central Texas time. And now, here's your host, the Underground Professor.
I know the urge to arm yourself, because that's what I did.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. Whether it's someone who already knows the world's leaders, knows the military, someone tested and ready to lead in a dangerous world. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
Hell, there you go. Don't! Who knew? But our president is hard at work, not blaming anybody, being an American today. An American, not a Democrat or a Republican. That is good news. Good news. Didn't know he knew how to do that. All right, put my ears on. I had my hat on here. I don't know if I can show everybody on the camera here, but I had my three-corner hat for tax day. I'll just take that off because I can't wear my headsets and wear that at the same time. But make a little noise here. All right. I am the Underground Professor. This is live from the Hermitage of Conservative Studies. Remedial Conservative Studies, I might add, out of North Texas. And we've had a very sad day, of course. We've had more loss of life under this president's reign, more terrorist attacks. There were connected, or perhaps connected, I don't know if they're connected or not. Don't let me jump the gun here, but there were, what's the word I want? In concert, several attacks over in Iraq today. And some 50 people were killed. Over in America, we had the Boston Marathon. And so there was a bombing there, multiple bombings evidently, at least two. They found a couple more. There was one over at the start sign. There was one near the VIP pavilion where they had people of all places from Sandy Hook. They had people there as VIPs for the race. And evidently they were near one of the first bombs. Excuse me. The latest, according to Tulio here in the chat room, is another person's been killed. I guess that's now 3. I've seen 3, I've seen 5, I've seen 10. I've seen anywhere from 125 to 140 people injured, depending on what news source you're looking at. CNN's reporting 132. I suspect most of the people who work at CNN can't spell it, so I don't know how much I trust them. But the Dick came out today, and our dictator-in-chief, DIC for short, he came out and gave a speech. It was uninspired. It was kind of a neutral speech, and it was a teleprompter speech, of course. There was no passion to it. It was recycled from the Benghazi, recycled from just about every other tragedy and national horror that we've been through while this man has been president. We had the typical don't jump through two conclusions avenue from the president, which is, of course, accurate and something that we should not do. We're not going to do that on this show. We just simply don't have any facts. They aren't being reported. I don't know why they're not being reported, but nothing but speculation and putting experts on to talk about what could have this or could have been that on all the talking head programs. Blessedly, I was unplugged all day, and I did not learn of this until 5 o'clock tonight when I got home. When I got back to the office from work. I was out in the field. I got back and I learned of the tragedy for the first time. So I have not heard an entire day of speculation and lies and innuendos, and so I haven't been all worked up like some of the conservatives on Twitter have, getting angry at all the talking heads on the liberal news programs from Fox to CNN, blaming conservatives for this. Now, they don't want to jump to conclusions. They don't want anybody jumping to conclusions because they have a Saudi in custody or I guess he's actually in the hospital. He's in protective custody. He's not been arrested. He's been injured. And he may or may not have something to do with the bombing besides being a victim or an injured person of it. He could have been the cause of it. No one knows. That's in the news. But it's funny how they tell us not to speculate that this is a terrorist event with what's going on in Iraq, with the fact that almost every terrorist act that has happened in America that has been a foreign terrorist, not a domestic one, the Saudis have been involved. Our friends, Bush's friends, remember? And yet we have one in custody, allegedly, or not, depending on who you believe. But we're not to jump to any conclusions. I've noticed that whenever there's an attack like this, the very first thing the media does is it blames conservatives because it gets out there in the societal meme, the zeitgeist of America. And the low information voters, those who typically vote, and now both parties have low information voters, don't get me wrong. But the ones who typically vote Democrat, it will be enough that they heard that this was probably a conservative Tea Party / event. And that's because, just everybody knows that, first off, conservatives are violent. Not like the Occupy Wall Street people who were just out peacefully protesting. Forget the fact that there's not been a single arrest at any Tea Party event of a Tea Party member. And that we usually clean up the places we're at and leave them better than we found them. And we follow all laws, rules, and regulations, and we're respectful to law enforcement. None of that seems to matter for our not to jump to conclusions media because they blame us for everything. And radio show hosts to Fox News, they'll be responsible, to the Republicans. And evidently this has also been part of the sequester has resulted in this bombing. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. It's funny. I had planned to open the show with a joke about the Boston Marathon, and then I get to work and I discover that it's that there was a bombing there, and a couple of my buddies there probably they told me they think it's probably too soon to make a joke about the marathon, and of course, I don't mean a bombing joke. I mean, I was going to make a joke about the marathon. I didn't even know the bombing was happening. So it's kind of weird how the world works. The liberal media might have that right. Maybe you people are all a part of my dream. And I dream these things. And so in my mind, I started thinking about the Boston Marathon. And that I was going to make a joke about it. And then boom, look what happens. So maybe the left, maybe CNN, maybe those ilk of the Democrat Party have it right, that we are responsible for national tragedies. I'm not even sure I like the term tragedy when it comes to this, on account of if it's a terrorist act, then yes, it's not a tragedy. If it's a terrorist act, it was a planned event. It's an act of war, not a tragedy. You don't watch old World War II movies and think, D-Day was a tragedy. I mean, it was tragic for everybody involved, dead or alive, right? But we don't call it a tragedy. This is no different, people. We are at war with the sheetheads, and remember, we can't call them ragheads. I'm trying to become more culturally sensitive to the fact, and so, out of respect for my Arabic friends, I decided that we will not call them ragheads on this program, that we will call them sheetheads. S-H-E-E-T. And so, there you go. Now, my daughter's sending me a message, and I'm having to remind her once again because she doesn't listen to this show, allegedly because she's always got to study. She doesn't need to bother me while I'm doing it. Okay, well, all right. Now where do we go? 3 a.m. phone call. That was the commercial that Hillary Clinton played when she was running and campaigning to be the candidate for office against Barack Hussein Obama. This was supposed to be her coronation, not his. And she opened up with that advertisement. And I think it's funny because if you think about it, this entire presidency has been one crisis to the next. Now, granted, they made most of them. But that's what they want. They want a crisis environment so that they can force or cudgel or trick you into surrendering your freedoms and your rights. Now, they have their operatives out there brainwashing our children into it, as you already know. We talked about that on the last show, where they're flat out having fourth graders write sentences out stating that they would be willing to trade their freedoms for some security. But the ones that they haven't convinced yet, the ones they haven't brainwashed, and there's I'm reminded of a quote, if I can remember it, and bear with me because you know how I am. I'm thinking, Mary's not on here. If she is, she's on the phone, so she can't tell me. I think it goes like this. When an opponent declares, "I will not come over to your side," I calmly say, "Your child belongs to us already." It goes on, but what are you? This man goes forward and says, "You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in this new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community." Those words are prophetic. They should put a chill up your spine, saying that people like me, we're old timers, we're going to die soon, yeah. But our children, they've gotten to them. They got to them in the education camps called public schools. And they're converting them. They're teaching them that government is a solution to everything, to look to government for your solutions, for your wealth, for your jobs, for your answers. All right? That's what they're telling us. Those words were uttered by a man you know. November the 6th, 1933. It was by a fellow community organizer. Yep, a community organizer. We know how good that is. Community organizing makes for the best leaders in our country. Sorry, I had to open the door. It was getting really hot in the office. He was talking at this speech about disarming civilians, socializing medicine, making it universal, government stimulus spending, like QE1, QE2, TARP, all the others that we've had recently. Does that sound familiar? by a unitary executive who was presiding over the government, ignoring the Constitution. Now, I think I slipped and gave you the date. I meant to say November 6th. I didn't mean to say the year. But if I had not said the year, would you have known that I was talking about Barack Hussein Obama? Or would you have guessed that I was talking about Herr Hitler? The Führer, das Führer. Germany's National Socialist Government. That's who I was talking about. Excuse me. And you think about that. I've been thinking so much about that paper that child signed, stating that she, or he, rather, would give away his constitutional freedoms, his rights, in order to feel secure by the government. Not actually be secure by the government, but to feel secure by the government. By the way, caller, welcome. If you want to talk, click on the button and I'll bring you on. If you're just wanting to listen and stay the way you are, I'll leave you there. And in the in the chat room, we have a couple of guests. And remember, at Blog Talk Radio, you are always just a number, especially at UGP Radio. And we have Tulio, who is probably, he's been vying for the #1 fan slot from Mary. So it's neck and neck now. You guys should get on like Foursquare and start logging in and see who wins. And my kids taught me Foursquare, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. In fact, I use it a lot to tell me where to go eat. It's kind of like having a little wife on your phone. Let's go here. I don't care where we eat, but let's go here. So, we've had a tragedy. We've had maybe a terrorist activity. Thank God our president, our Dick, got up there and told us that he, make no mistake, would get to the bottom of this. And I believe him because he told us he would do that for Benghazi. He told us he would do that for, well, I could go on. I could just name probably 30 things he said that to. But I'm sure that he and his administration will have laser-like focus on this terrorist attack. And they will not sleep until they have found out who did it and why they did it and punish those who did it with the full force of America behind it. Of course, we've heard that for everything. Now, unfortunately, I think it turns out that the makers of Iron Man 3's movie will probably be arrested now, because they usually arrest someone who's made a movie. And then they will... so if you've recently made a movie, I would go into hiding, at least for the next few weeks, until America's attention is turned to the next crisis generated by this president. But you know, I looked at Twitter, and probably 1 out of 100 thought his speech went well. 1 out of 100 liked what he said, and they said things like, well, he wasn't political, that was good, this is what we needed now. Except for I don't believe the president when he says this isn't political. When those words come out of his mouth, I grab my wallet and I look to run. And oh my goodness, I've lost my phone and I can hear it dinging now. Where did it go? Now I can't turn it off. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's more Twitter. Sarah Palin. Most people on here, on Twitter, don't believe him. They don't agree with it. They think the president's lying, which, you know, who knows. I don't think the president was lying. To tell you the truth, I think our president doesn't have very many thoughts in his body at all. I think he simply read what was on TOTUS. And thank God we got TOTUS back, because could you imagine how many years the thief would have got if he had stolen TOTUS prior to the press conference today. He got 7 years for stealing it before. Thank God he is in prison and can't be blamed for anything else. But TOTUS tells the president what to say. This is how you get inane debacles like press corps and things when he's talking, because he doesn't know the words. Have you guys ever watched Anchorman? Evidently they're making a sequel to it. I don't know why, but it was a funny movie. My daughter's favorite. He's a pinko commie. Will Ferrell is. But they're making a sequel. And one of the things about Will Ferrell's character is that anything that came on the teleprompter, he read. He did not know what he was saying. He just simply read it without response or emotion. He just blotted it out. And I think our president is like this too. I think Dick gets up there and he just reads, and then he moves on thinking that he's done a good job. And knowing that the low information voter has heard what they need to hear and they can move on. They've got closure now. Now, not the people who are in the tragedy, not the people in Boston, but for most of the country, they heard the president's on the job, and kind of like Kim Possible. We have Barry Possible up there now on the job, and you no longer have to worry about it. You don't have to follow this thread in the news. You don't have to pay attention to it. You don't have to ask questions. You certainly don't need follow-up or back, what's the word I want, feedback on the events, because the president has told us that he will focus laser-like on this. He will not rest until he's found the bad guys and so on and so forth, etc., etc. Time and time again. If I were someone in the Boston Marathon who had any first-hand knowledge of the events, I would probably go into hiding, knowing what happened to all the witnesses at Benghazi and how they disappeared. You might, if you have first-hand knowledge of the marathon bombings, you might want to disappear. In all seriousness, if you have loved ones up there and you are worried about them, then you can call this number. Excuse me. Whew. Another super burrito just before I went on air. The marathon number that's been set up to call and check on loved ones and get information directly is 617-635-4500. And if you are an eyewitness and have some relevant information that can help in the prosecution of this case, then you can call 1-800-494-TIPS, T-I-P-S, 1-800-494-TIPS. And the marathon number again is 617-635-4500. So there you go. And while I'm giving out numbers, if you're annoyed at Marco Rubio and his tail between his legs attitude, boy, I don't know what is going on here. I can't talk. That might be a good thing for y'all. His tail between his legs. He came out and he swore to God there would be no compromise on the immigration bills the Gang of Eight were doing. That we would have verification first, that we would have border security first, and there would not be amnesty. Well, guess what? It looks like Marco Rubio's okay with A, amnesty, and B, doing amnesty first and then securing the border in the out years once again down the road. So Marco Rubio, sellout, his Twitter handle is at Marco Rubio, MarcoRubio. And you can call his office at 202-224-3121 and let them know what you think of him being a sellout yet again. I told everybody many, many weeks and months ago that Marco Rubio is not a Tea Party member anymore. That he gave up that status. It didn't take long because he was more concerned with getting funding from people like Boehner, getting on the right committees. And so Boehner and Cantor and McCarthy had him over a barrel because his ambitions exceeded his oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. If you take an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution from domestic and foreign enemies, then committee assignments should not even be a tertiary consideration. But they are to Rubio. They are to Rubio. So he has joined the establishment Republicans that don't exist. He has surrendered his conservative status. He has surrendered his Tea Party bona fides. He's surrendered my respect for him. And I no longer believe anything he says. He went on way too many news shows and radio talk shows and swore his defense and pledged his honor. And his sacred honor meant nothing to him. So there we go. Thank you, Marco Rubio, for selling out the country. And the good news is we no longer have to worry about fighting to protect our country, people. Because if amnesty is secured, then the Democrat Party just got swollen by 10 million or more votes. And if they got that, then it's just pointless to even run as a Republican anymore. Because we won't win national office. Not when every candidate, enough of them, will have Hispanic, and not with Hispanics moving out of Texas and other border states. They're in Iowa now. They're in all kinds of states by the numbers. I don't mean just one or two showing up to wash dishes or cook Mexican food. I'm saying they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Illegal. Thank you, Ted Kennedy, for destroying our immigration process that worked for 200 years. Our policy of taking the gifted and the educated into our country, no matter where they were from, and changing it from that to taking the lowest common denominator and thieves and criminals and drug runners and bringing them over and making them noble. You see, that's the thing that Democrats had to do. They had to make this about immigration, which it isn't about immigration. Because an immigrant wants to be an American. And when you go and you see by the numbers how many of these people come into our country and do not bother to become citizens, shows you they don't want to be an American. When you see that they don't want to learn English, they don't want to be an American. When you see that their entire life structure is from the country they are from, the holidays they celebrate. They don't celebrate 4th of July. They don't celebrate holidays like we do. They celebrate holidays like they are a separate and distinct culture. And this is what Democrats have done to our country. This diversity crap that they call it. Of course, they never want conservatives in their diversity, do they? They don't want Republicans in their diversity. They certainly don't want Tea Party people in their diversity. And they've been forcing everybody else's diversity down our throats and slowly and surely destroying this country. Now, I'm never given accolades or awards when I say what I'm about to say. But if these other countries were so great, then why did they leave them to come to ours? And I ask you to tell me what country, can you pull a map out and start pointing out all the great innovations and ideas that moved man forward? Tell me all the countries that those ideas came from. And you can't pick America. Tell me what great and innovative things beyond Nazis did Germany give us? Now, they've given us some pretty good automobiles. They gave us the automobile. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think BMW invented the automobile. Outside of that, what has Germany given us? Okay, England gave us. Right? We were that. America was created by the English. So we can say England's a pretty good deal. What has England done, though, since we left them? What great idea did they come up with to further mankind another 5,000-year leap or a 10-year leap? What leaps has mankind taken that another country has done? You cannot even tell me Russia, the Soviet Union. They were a third world country with a first world military. And they did not advance technologies in space travel or any of that. We did all that. They mimicked and copied most of our stuff. They stole a lot of it. They were big into stealing our ideas and then using them. I can still remember one time I was looking at some. Oh well, no, I probably can't say that. Never mind. I might drift into something I shouldn't talk about, so I won't. But the Australia. I mean, what did they give us? Kangaroo Jack? And they gave us one song, Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport. But what else has Australia given us? Oh, they can play golf now, evidently. They won the Some Open. Japan? What have they given us? You can say that the Asian tiger has created technology by manufacturing, but most of the intellectual property for things like, say, iPods and iPads and MacBook Pros, they're made over in China, but they are not. They're not conceived in China. Those were American minds that made this technology. American minds that create software. This is why we haven't been that concerned with the lack of manufacturing in our country, other than for union jobs, because most of the ideas in this world come from American minds. And if we flood this country with lowest common denominator thieves and crooks, rapscallions, if we flood this place with busboys and maids and not nuclear scientists, not mathematicians, then we're doomed. We're doomed. One of the greatest things America did following World War II was we did what was called the brain drain. That was a term they actually came up with, the brain drain. We drained countries' brains all over the world. That's part of the reason why you can't name me a country that did something fantastic. Because we took all their best talent in the 40s. And they haven't recovered. Now, cry me a river. I don't care that we did it. I'm glad we did it. We're Americans. We are the best. We need to be the best. Because only the best can protect and feed the world. And that's what America does. I don't care how much of the world's energy we consume. That doesn't bother me at all because we feed the world. And then we protect the world. And most of the world can exist without paying a huge portion of their gross national product towards national defense because they know the Americans are right around the corner keeping things safe. But we can't do that anymore, not with this president. Not with Jimmy Carter Jr. gutting the military and using the sequester to damage and destroy the military. Not with the further cuts they're planning. Not with the decreases and the descendings on all the things that we had planned to update and revolutionize our military's capabilities. Tell me another country that has moved mankind forward. There was a great 5,000-year leap when we created the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The Northwest Ordinance came in, another move. Then there was a space program. Well, of course, I guess we could do other things. Trains, military innovations during Civil War, and then nuclear, which came out of America, and then all the things that came out of the space program, Velcro to air conditioning. You tell me what other countries have created anything revolutionary or good. And I want to know. I sincerely want to know. Because as far as I can tell, most innovations in medicine come from America. Most innovations in labor come from America. Most innovations in manufacturing come from America. Most innovations in technology come from America. And yet, what are we doing? A segment of our society is looking to all the countries that have failed in history and saying, you know what? They had good ideas, they just didn't execute it right. They didn't spend enough money, or the right people didn't try it, or they should have done more. So they're down there taking all the failed ideas from all the failed countries that today exist solely on antiquity. Go on a cruise. I took a 22-day cruise with my family a few years ago. We went to Russia and Germany and Poland. I mean, this thing was the most amazing cruise I've ever been on. And yes, it was the only cruise I've ever been on, but still it was the most amazing. And the thing that I took away when I was done, we were cruising back to our home port, and I got to thinking, every place we visited, every place, relied on tourism to fund it. They needed tourism because they don't have anything new to offer. When we went to Russia, now Russia is an amazing place right now. Don't get me wrong, and a lot of embracing of capitalism, things that we used to do. Now Russia's doing because they've jettisoned all their old failed ideas. But when you go to certain places in Russia, then what do they have to offer? They have for tourism to see communist things and czarist things. Both failed, both old, nothing new. You don't go to Russia to see new stuff. People come to America, to Disneyland and places like that, because it's the newest and neatest stuff. It's new technology, and they come to see America's greatness. They come to see all the cool things that they only hear and dream about. We go to other places in this world to go see our roots, to go see where mankind came from. We get excited about things that are 100 or 200 years old. There's places in England where they call that the new section. We don't go places to go see what they're doing now about the future. Now, there might be some people who will go like to Japan and see the monorails, the Magnalift monorails. They are actually doing something there. I don't know about that being a leap, but it's an innovation. What we are doing right now is we are destroying America's ability to continue feeding the world, to continue innovating, to continue finding more and better ways to make things cheaper, smaller, faster, better, to make more food in the same square feet of land. Innovations in crops, innovations in harvesting, innovations in food distribution. These are things that are going to go away across the board because of our brain drain, because our public schools are not teaching people how to be engineers. They're not teaching them how to be physicists. They're not teaching them how to do the very hard and very good things. And most of those people that we have that do these come from private schools, come from homeschooling. Most, not all. I'm sure you can show me some examples, some anecdotal evidences out there that some public school birthed some genius. But then, that's the exception, isn't it? It's not the rule. You can't show me where it's the rule that some school is generating success after success. In baseball, if you fail 7 times out of 10, you're considered one of the best. But that doesn't quite translate, does it, to high school? It doesn't quite translate. And yet, they're thinking that a 300 batting average in high school, and I don't mean on the baseball team, I mean in graduation, in skills and knowledge. They're thinking a 300 batting average is excellent. It's failure. When students come to college, they cannot spell, they do not know how to write, they can't articulate or defend their thoughts or positions. They're sophomoric morons, at best, most of them. Every now and then you'll get one that's truly gifted, but again, the exception. And I'm wondering, what are future generations in our country going to do? What pool of talent are they going to rely on? Government seems to rely mostly on Ivy League schools, which pretty much generate crap. Legacies. That's how you graduate. When Harvard graduates 99% of its graduates with honors, then honors means nothing. And this is one of the reasons that the left has worked so hard to get rid of scoring, to get rid of testing. That's why they're so afraid of merit-based teaching, that their paychecks be based on their ability to actually teach information. Most teachers in the public school system do not know the material they teach. They don't understand it. It's regurgitation. They are given handouts. They are given products to use to teach the material. What they go to school for is to learn how to be a teacher, not the information they are about to pass on. Now, professors are different. Professors in college are required to have X number of hours, 50, 60 hours, in the class that they're trying to teach. If you're going to go teach political science, you better have 50, 60 hours of it, and a master's degree if you're going to be at a junior college, PhD if you're going to be at a 4-year college. But you don't go and teach political science classes if you don't have any hours in it. It doesn't matter what your master's is in, but it does matter if you have the hours in it. We don't do that in high school or middle school or elementary because our teachers are supposed to be, I don't know. I don't even know what they're supposed to be, but they're not teaching our children. That's for darn sure. That's for darn sure. And if we allow amnesty once again, and we do it once again without any ramifications or punishments, once again, and we don't do anything to prevent the next wave from coming, and in Texas, we are already seeing a problem. People that were self-deporting back to Mexico and the other South American countries because of a lack of jobs over here in our country are coming back anyway, knowing there are no jobs, because amnesty is right around the corner. Amnesty is right around the corner. And they're excited. And you see news footage where they will go out and proclaim that they don't care if they get arrested because they know Obama's going to let them go and make them citizens. So they break our laws coming into our country. And then they subsume a citizen's identity in order to get a tax number. This should be something that's felonious. It should be something that sends you to jail for a very long time and then sent back to the country you came from. But we're not doing that. I think every person that we catch in this country illegally needs to have a DNA tag injected into them so we can track them on a satellite. And everybody who comes over here on a visa should get one too, a subcutaneous tracker, so that when your visa expires, we'll know where you are and we can pick you up and take you home. Or even better, let's put something in there which starts causing horrendous amounts of pain, like little electric shocks in your wrist, so bad you can't use your wrist. When your visa starts expiring, it starts buzzing, kind of like the underground fence system I have my dogs on. When they get too close to the fence, it buzzes. If they get in the no man's land, or no dog's land as it is, the DMZ we call it, they go in the DMZ, they get shocked. Perhaps we ought to do that with visitors who overstay their welcome. But what are we going to do in America? We're going to reward them. We're going to give them citizenship. We're going to bypass all the people who spent tons of money trying to legally become citizens in our country. Following the rules, studying, learning English, learning about the Founding Fathers and the Constitution, and taking that test, which most Americans, because of the public school system, couldn't pass. All so that the Democrat Party can secure its position in power. Where are our statesmen at? You realize that our Founding Fathers had people like Jefferson and Adams side by side, fighting and arguing over things? Fighting and arguing over things. And yet, they had different beliefs, didn't they? Adams was on one side, Jefferson was on the other, and yet they both would be appalled at this idea. Because both of them, despite their political differences, put America first. As they saw it, but they still put America first. Even Adams eventually realized his sedition acts were wrong. But think about it. Where are the men like that today? We're not going to get them out of this public school system. So many of our Founding Fathers did not even have an official education, a public school education. Some did. But I would ask you today, do you think we could field a Congress of men like came out in 1774? The First Continental Congress, you think we could field a team like that again in America? Certainly not. Look at the brain trust we have to pull from when you have people like Harry Reid and Speaker Boehner as the top men of their party. I ask you, where do we draw from if that's the best? If those are our alpha leaders? Both of them crybaby, girly men. And they're at the top of the heap. And if we educate people like we're doing, or ill-educating them, teaching them about condoms, teaching them about recycling and hugging trees and saving dolphins, but we don't teach them what a hypotenuse angle is. We don't teach them about parallelograms. We don't teach them that there is a difference between 2, 2, and 2. And one of my biggies, there and there. We are teaching people in law schools that the term co-conspirator is an acceptable idea. Now I ask you, think about this. Co-conspirator. Can you conspire with yourself? Can you? Some people can. Some people are quite able of conspiring with themselves because they have multiple personalities. But in all seriousness, one cannot conspire with oneself. Therefore, one cannot be a co-conspirator. And yet our legal system is pushing people out using that term. I know that's just a small thing, very small thing. It's just an annoyance maybe. But it tells you a lot about our country. It tells you a lot about our country and what we're capable of and where we're going. It tells you a lot about our country when we find out that a valedictorian, if the school even still acknowledges valedictorians, because many schools are getting rid of that antiquated system of social separation, they're not allowed to thank God in their speeches. But in the same schools, they can pray to Mecca, they can put on burqas, and they can read from the Quran. But they can't say God bless you if a student sneezes. It shows you the state of our education system. It shows you where we're going. We are graduating people who are quite capable of being very gifted. I'm not saying Americans aren't smart, and I'm not saying that we're not capable. God, talk to some of these kids. They're brilliant. They are purposefully being stupefied by the left so that they can be controlled, so they can be governed. They are being dumbified by them so that they will not know that they are sacrificing their rights and their freedoms for security. I've talked to many of them, and when we discuss things, they don't even see many of the things that I discuss with them as a loss of freedom. They don't see gun control as a loss of freedom. They don't see taxes as a loss of freedom. We have some of the most draconian tax rates. And of course, the man who wants to give us the, what's the name of that stupid rule he wanted to give us? I can't remember now what he called it. That thing where you don't pay a higher rate than you pay a higher rate than your secretary, or secretary doesn't pay a higher rate. Well, look at his tax rate. It was like 18%. I made about 10% of what he made, maybe even less, maybe 1% of what he made, and my tax bracket was much higher than his. Go figure. As a percentage, I donated more money to charity too. He dated more dollars, but I gifted as a percentage more money to charity. And if you go and you bring in the Bidens, Dr. and Mr. Biden, boy, what an incredibly generous souls they are. I had the numbers somewhere and I can't find them, I don't remember, but he gave something like $180 to charity this year. They never give money to charity. They're tightwads. And the reason they don't give money to charity is they are very aware that they don't have to, because they have designed and helped create and push a government system into our lives that does all the charitable work for them. They believe that their part in charity is getting more and more government involved in controlling and helping our lives, and controlling it and being there, and welfare. That's how Biden and those people measure their charitable giving, by how many people they put on. And I imagine the Bidens think they were pretty darn charitable this year, adding 40 million people to the welfare rolls. 40 million people. And they call that a good thing. And children in our schools do not see that as a loss of freedom. How do you teach people these things? Guys, I'm going to be right back. My dogs have another dog and I don't want them to eat it. Hold on, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Yay!
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. Doesn't have a point of view, knows not where he's going to. Isn't he a bit like you and me?
Whew. All right, that was a little wiener dog. My heart just went out to me that I was going to have to tell somebody else their puppy has vanished. Okay. My dogs live in a pack. I have 3 of them, at 2 shepherds and a shepherd mastiff, and they live in a pack. And when another dog comes in, they don't understand how to play or how to be friends with it, which most of them come over and that's all they want to do. They see some dogs and they want to have some fun, and they end up being dinner. Okay. Hey, Billy, didn't see you come in. Welcome. So, all right, got 2 callers on the call list. If you want to talk, push the 1-1 thing and let me know. Otherwise, I am on my own, and I'll leave you guys where you are. Nationalizing children. Nationalizing children. I don't want to give that any small shift because I started talking about that in the last show. And I got to thinking, maybe I didn't do enough telling you about that. There was a set of instructions given in 1918. Now, this is cited in the Separating School and State, How to Liberate America's Families. Okay, it's by Sheldon Reichman. And these were teachers in the Soviet Union just prior to, the Bolshevik Revolution, or during, right after. I can't remember now. I should know that, but that's out of my area of expertise. I ran off one of the callers. I didn't mean to scare you off, caller. I would have left you alone. But this was one of the instructions they were given to their teachers. Now tell me if that doesn't remind you of something you just heard on this show a couple days ago. We must remove the children from the crude influence of their families. We must make them over and, to speak frankly, nationalize them. Now, if you look at The Collective Family, a handbook for Russian parents, I'm serious, a handbook for Russian parents, the Soviet family theorist Anton Makarenko. Okay? He writes that in part that the Soviet family, he's talking about the Soviet family, he says that they're an organic part of society, of Soviet society now. This is, and I'm going to be clear, we're not talking about modern day Russia. Modern day Russia, hopefully, will not go back that way. Everything that I've seen when I was there and everything I know of them, they are grasping capitalism, they're grasping small d democracy. Hopefully they'll grab small r republicanship, but still, they're moving in the right directions towards freedom, and you can see the growth of economics that Russia is enjoying right now, where we are not. The Soviet family was described as being an organic part of Soviet society. The parents are not without authority. They say this. You're not without authority as a parent, but your authority is simply a reflection. Now remember Plato and the caves, right? Your authority is simply a reflection of social authority. In our country, he alone is a man of worth whose needs and desires are the needs and desires of a collectivist. Our family offers rich soil for the cultivation of such collectivism. If we want to talk about equality of opportunity for children, then the fact that children are raised in families means there is no equality. In order to raise children with equality, we must take them away from families and communally raise them. Now, what commie do you think that's from? That's from Dr. Mary Jo Bain, the Assistant Secretary of Administration for Children and Families at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services all the way up to 1996. Currently, this person is a Thornton Bradshaw Professor of Public Policy and Management at the Harvard Kennedy School. And she's quoted in The Family, It's Surviving and Healthy by Dolores Barclay, Tulsa World, August 21, 1977. That quote I gave you is from 77 during the Carter years. They haven't gone away. They've gotten better at packaging. They've gotten better at manipulating. But this is what these people have done since the 20s in our country. Investments mean confiscation of private wealth. Community means state-engineered collectivism. Public education, that's the way they talk about re-education of children. Public education means re-education and socialization, re-education and socialization of our children into the collective, kind of like the Borg, if you will. And resistance is futile. Melissa Harris Perry is the reason I got to thinking about all these things. This is where I started. And I started doing research, and I started looking at different authors and writers and what they were saying and doing on part of the American Cultural Revolution via the progressive movement in our political system. And of course, you remember the commercial I played, the Lean Forward commercial, right, from Melissa Harris Perry. And hopefully I'll remember it, right? You guys, Tula, you guys, did you hear that? Do you remember it? Or do I need to play that again? But, if I do, I will do that. I'm not sure if I can find it, though. Let me see if I can get it. Rick Perry, nope, that's not it. Melissa? I don't remember what it is now. Let me just put in child. Nope. I think I remember it's kid, right? Kid. K-I-D. Where's Mary? Oh, it keeps bumping me out. No wonder I can't find it. Yes, here we go. Listen to this. It only takes 40 seconds.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the household, then we start making better investments.
I like it. Forgot that was coming. Lou Rockwell, I like the way he summed this up. Let me see if I can find that quote. I have it somewhere around here. And Harris Perry is a credentialed academic. She has the odd and annoying habit so common among adolescents of ending every sentence with a vocal inflection that suggests a question. In her Lean Forward ad, she uncorked this specimen of unfiltered collectivist cant. I think he should have said rant, but he goes on to quote the commercial you just had. And then I like how he sums up these Lean Forward commercials that are being played on MSNBC, which is where I got that last clip. He says that the Lean Forward spots feature various MSNBC luminaries holding forth like Communist Party functionary, exhorting the cadres at a struggle session in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. That's actually rather brilliant. Harry Parris's disdain for parental authority is wedded to a denial of the idea that the individual child has a right to self-ownership. Think about that. Not even the child has a right to self-ownership. Now, let's apply that to something. Let's apply that to something like, abortion. Well, if a child doesn't have a right to self-ownership, then it's okay to abort them, isn't it? And for those of you who have been long-term listeners, which mean you've been around for about 8 months with me on the radio show, and those of you who know me beyond that, academically or socially, you know that I have a long-held tenet that abortion is not necessarily about birth control. That it is about politics, it's about power, sure. But I have been, when you go and you look at, what's her name, Margaret Sanger, there were two major forces driving Planned Parenthood's creation. One was population. Back in the 70s and before, but certainly in the 70s, and now, you know, most of us, we look at the world in our own timeline. Now, things, as a historian, I know things that occur outside of the timeline, but not everything. You know, you can't know it all. But I certainly remember in the 70s, there was this big deal about zero population growth, ZPG. And there was a big push that we stop producing children because we're overpopulating the planet, which is, of course, balderdash. I want you to think about something. Think about the most, what's the word I want to use? Not revolutionary. What's the word I want here? Oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, and it's important because the word means something. But industrialized, I guess, is a way used. I can't think of the actual word I want. I apologize, everybody. But think about, out of the entire country, which state do you think has, as a percentage, used the majority of their land for building homes and roads and industries and businesses? You know, they've industrialized, not modernized. I mean usage of the land, whatever that's called. But they have utilized their land space. Which state do you think has, oh, I almost had the word, has used the majority of their land? They've industrialized it. They've used it. Golly, the word is so important here because I don't think everybody's understanding what I'm saying. But the answer to the question is it's New Jersey. New Jersey has used 37% of its land by putting houses and roads and stuff in. So think about it. If New Jersey only used 37% and they are the most industrialized, most land used state, what does that tell you about the rest of the country? It tells you we're wide open. We have plenty of room to grow, plenty of room to move people around, plenty of room for babies. And we have plenty of food. As Barack Hussein Obama said, white people throw away more food on cruise ships than most third world countries use in a year. Well, cultivate's close, but I don't want just to think about land like under farming. I mean, whatever it is, I mean land that is used that can't, you know, which consumes the land up. It doesn't leave it free or open. That, you know, like when you're driving through states and you see just open field after open field after open field, and then you pull into the city and, you know, and it's all congested and shoved into one area. A lot of that has to do with programs called smart growth and things. Be scared of anything with the word smart in front of it. But that's what this is all about. It's about population control, especially certain people in the population. Okay? But when you can talk about a child not having individual ownership of their life, or the parent for that matter, then that makes them part of the collective. And if it's part of the collective, then it's up to society to decide whether they live or die. Ruth Bader Ginsburg What a beauty she was. She was big into collective management collective management of many things, but especially of the human population. She wrote, with regards to Roe v. Wade, that it was a product of concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations we don't want too many of. Now, what do you think that's a dog whistle about? The left likes to call things dog whistles now, or code words, or racist language. What do you think Democrat Ruth Bader Ginsburg is talking about when she says that they are concerned about population growth, and particularly growth in populations we don't want too many of? Here's a hint. She's not talking about Tea Party. I don't want to scare anybody, but she's talking about black people. That's right. The Democrat Party is worried there'll be too many black people, which is why they wanted Roe v. Wade. That's why they passed it. That's why they found penumbras emanating to get privacy so that they could stretch it all the way over to reproductive rights, so they could stretch it all the way over to a woman's right to choose. And this is why you have abortion mills where people are in there killing babies, and they have a clean room for white people. And then the blacks and Hispanics and Asians all go through the dirty, nasty rooms. Because no one's going to care about them. They won't complain. If they do, no one cares. If they die, who cares? It wasn't a white person. At least that's how the Democrats see it. That's who you support when you're a Democrat. Okay, that was just between you and me now. We don't want anybody else to hear that. But you think about what I said. The belief that the unborn human child has a right to be protected against lethal aggression, according to Harris Perry, Harris-Perry, I should say, is a faith claim, not associated with science. That's right. Us crazy religious people make a faith claim. And my God's invisible, so what rights do I have? What rights do I have to protect an unborn child when I have a made-up, pretend, invisible ghost as a God? No one's going to buy that malarkey, so I don't have any legitimacy in my defense that this is a soul, a life worthy of preservation, because that soul belongs to the collective, and the collective decides if it's worthy or not. If you view abortion as a moral proposition, the humanity of developing individual characteristics, individual identities, is anathema to the collective, which is why they want to take our children and indoctrinate them, because we're here teaching them that they have a right to themselves. We're here teaching them that they have freedoms, that they have responsibilities that go along with those freedoms, and inalienable rights and inalienable duties. And the collective progressives are trying to teach you that you're just part of the whole, that you do what you're told like a good little automaton. You do the job you're told. You date the person you're told. You have the amount of children you're told. There's an essay that I wish we had time to get into, but Ms. Harris Perry wrote 3 years ago an essay in The Nation magazine. And she wrote this. This is how it's described. The Harris Perry describes how she catechizes her unfortunate students in the gospel of the almighty state. Quote, this is Harris Perry's quote, "I often begin my political science courses with a brief introduction to the idea of the state. The state is the entity that has a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence, force, and coercion. If an individual travels to another country and kills its citizens, we call it terrorism. Do we? If the state does it, we call it war. If a man kills his neighbor, it's murder. If the state does it, it's a death penalty. If the individual takes the neighbor's money, it is theft. If the state does it, it is taxation. Now think about that. Of course, everything that I just read you there is wrong, isn't it? All right? For one thing, the state does determine the use of force. It has the ultimate use of force. It has the right to decide who lives and dies. She's not wrong there. But what she's failing to forget is one very important thing about America, and that is, where does sovereignty lie? Does sovereignty lie in Washington, D.C.? Yes, today it does. Is it supposed to be there? No. It's because a bunch of weak-spine individuals and a lack of leadership in both parties has allowed the erosion of our sovereignty to migrate and become centralized in the handful of an oligarchy. In the hands of an oligarchy. 600 people are telling what the rest of the country has to do. There is no more states' rights. A misuse of terms, but that's okay. There's no state sovereignty. We got rid of that by amendment. But if let's see, what does she say here? That if you travel to another country and kill one of its citizens, they call it terrorism. Well, not always. Sometimes if you just kill somebody, they call it murder. If it with the car and you're driving on the wrong side of the street in England and you forget which side you're supposed to be on, they call it vehicular manslaughter. They don't call it terrorism. But you see, she sets up these straw dogs where you have one or the other that she's talking about. And so you're either committing terrorism or you're murdering, right? The fact is, terrorism is when you come in and you do something like you bring in a dirty suitcase, a suitcase with a dirty bomb in it, and then explode it. That's terrorism. Taking over an airline and driving into a building is terrorism. Getting drunk, like a lot of these Hispanics are that we had in jail until recently because of the sequester that the Obama administration let them loose. Getting drunk and mowing down a pedestrian is not terrorism. It's murder. It's manslaughter, however you want to call it. It's not terrorism, you moron. But she sets this up. And this is her telling you how she sets up things for her students. And she does this because that's what professors do. They set up things, and you think, well, okay, well, that's reasonable. Yeah, that makes sense. If that's this and that's that, then okay, I follow that logic. And then whatever you tell me must be true. They lead you down this little thing where each little subtle shift in truth leads you down to where you start swallowing whole bags of crap in wholesale because you accepted little marginal truths in the beginning. Marginal truths. If you go to a country and kill a citizen, we call it terrorism. If the state does it, we call it war. Now, if you come over here and you do something like drive a plane into the building, it is terrorism. The reason we call that terrorism is because it wasn't done by a state. Now, there are state-sponsored terrorists, but Saudi Arabia is not sending over its uniformed soldiers to drive planes into our buildings. If they were, that would make that an act of war. There is a difference. We would not have different words for things if things weren't different. Do you understand that we would not have to use a term for ice if ice didn't exist? And so you can have iced tea or you can have tea. Both have tea in it. One has something, the other doesn't. You can have terrorism and you can have war. You can have murder. All three involve killing, like tea. But only one of them has ice in it. I hope you get what I'm saying there. This is a purposeful miscegenation of the word. Maybe that's not the word I want. I can't think of what the word is I want here. But that if a man kills his neighbor, it's murder. If the state does it, it's the death penalty. Well, now, if I kill my neighbor, and it depends on which neighbor, because I could either get a medal or go to jail. But if I kill my neighbor, it is murder. Unless, like, say, my neighbor comes through the front door and I shoot him, and then it's self-defense, isn't it? I mean, she sets up this thing without any further details, and you just assume that whatever it is she's telling you is right. Well, of course it's murder if I kill him, except for murder isn't murder when it's self-defense. It's self-defense. And if a state does it, then is it always the death penalty? Now, the state does have the death penalty. The state does kill murderers, but not in every case. It's not always war. It's not always murder, and it's not always a death penalty. But she sets these up as opposites to lure you into saying a string of logic, and then she shows you all the crap. If an individual takes his neighbor's money, it is theft. If the state does it, it is taxation. Excuse me. The state is authorized to tax. But if you've read Frederick Bastiat, then you realize anything that goes above and beyond the limited and required necessities of taxation that a state needs to have in order to function. All the other things that our country's doing, they go above and beyond the listed powers in the Constitution, are unconstitutional. They're extra constitutional, and therefore the taxation is also extra constitutional. Forget the fact that we have our own income taxes being taxed, and the clever way the progressives got that across. The clever way that income taxes were instituted in our country, and sadly, it was the Republican Party that saddled our country with income taxes. And we haven't learned our lesson yet, because the people that are in the leadership of the Republican Party don't seem to be in any hurry to do anything about the extra constitutional taxations, the unconstitutional taxations, the limited government. They don't seem to care about any of those things. They don't see an urgency that those of us in the Tea Party see. They don't see the crisis that is looming. When a state takes money that it's not entitled to, it is still theft. It is state-sponsored thievery. It is called piracy. We've talked about that many times reading La Loi by Frederick Bastiat. I highly encourage you to read it or go and listen to those shows that I have about the law. But good old Harris-Perry has a quote about the Tea Party. The Tea Party is a challenge to the legitimacy of the U.S. state, she insists. When Tea Party participants charge the current administration with various forms of totalitarianism, they are arguing that the government has no right to levy taxes or make policy. Now, I'm going to stop there in the middle. I hate doing that, but I'm going to, because that is such an egregious statement. Many of us are concerned about the totalitarianism, the usury that is coming out of Washington, out of this White House especially. When we argue about the totalitarianism, we are not saying the state does not have a right to tax. And because that is stupid. If you're a Tea Party member, then you are a constitutionalist and a strict constructionist. And if you are, then you are aware that we specifically enumerated the state with taxing authority. I don't think I can say that any simpler. we told the government that while we are sovereign, we're still going to let them raise taxes on the things that is appropriate to do. And then we listed what they could tax and what they could not. And then we listed all the powers and things that government should be involved in, and we even listed some things that it should not. And we used very clever terms that were not very ambiguous, like shall not, will not. Of course, now that's all subject to interpretation. Shall not could mean anything. Will not infringe, that means we can write whatever laws we want concerning your right to guns. But you see how clever they are? Tea Party people say no taxes are legal. Now we're anarchists. Now a conservative, a constitutionalist, someone who believes in the founding documents of our country, which makes you a centrist, has now been moved cleverly to the most extreme position on the political timeline, to the right. There is nothing to the right of an anarchist. Just like there is nothing to the left of a fascist. A fascist is someone who believes in total government control. And I would argue that that is what Harris Perry is arguing, that government is fascistic and has a right to total domination over its people. That sovereignty lies in government. Sovereignty lies in the elite, people like her who know better how we should live our lives. She's given a TV show, and she's put into academia to teach your children, which you pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year to send to that school. And you're getting them converted into progressive, mind-numbed robots. Now, when she made that conversation, she was also discussing how Georgia Representative John Lewis went through a Tea Party rally. And, now, of course, he and Pelosi and others claimed that racial epithets were used against them, that they were spit on, racial slurs were made, that they were made to feel uncomfortable, and they got scared and they had to hold each other and link arms, just like Martin Luther King did when those men were marching down Selma and they were scared crapless. And they had a right to be. Because the Democrats had a propensity to shoot them. Democrats had a propensity to use water cannons on them and dogs and beat them with bats. You look at their faces and you can see the fear on them. You can see the fear on Martin Luther King. You can see the fear on other well-known Negroes like Charlton Heston and like George Romney. Oh, wait a minute. Those are white guys that were in arm in arm with them. They were Republicans. Oh, so it was, wait a minute, it was the blacks and Republicans arm in arm, scared to death of the Democrats and the Klan. And so all of a sudden now, those people, those kind of people in the Tea Party are supposed to be spitting on black people and calling them racial names. That is not part of the right. That is from the left. That is from the history of the left. That is from the Democrat Party, the Klan. These are the people who do those kinds of things. You will find them in Occupy Wall Street, where you had to put up rape tents to protect women. In Tea Party rallies, women were safe. They were treated with respect. They did not fear for themselves. Unbelievable. The twist and the lies. Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart, a man I will miss until the day I die. We were not friends. We had just started communicating. I was a little slow on acknowledging his part in everything that he was doing, because I was busy doing my part. And then he died. What a loss we had. What a loss. What a voice for freedom against tyranny. He offered $100,000, I think it was, to anyone who could show proof or evidence that anybody spit or called a name to those people, to the Democrats that walked through a Tea Party, to John Lewis. These people lie about things when the truth would serve them better. They lie about everything because that's how they have to communicate to their low information voters. The people that support them cannot handle the truth, so they have to lie about everything. And they think that we are so stupid and so scared of being called racist that we will kowtow. Well, they have met a new group of Republicans, a new group of conservatives, ones that aren't afraid of that, people like me that aren't cowed by the term racist. I don't have white guilt. One of the reasons I don't have white guilt is because I have a certificate that I have in my office, and I'm putting it up here in front of the camera now for you guys to see, and it's a proclamation of amnesty and pardon granted to all persons of European descent, granted to me by Walter E. Williams, absolving me of all responsibility and guilt for racist activities and for slavery. My soul is free when it comes to that. If I ever got into my family history with you guys, you would be amazed at some of the things that my family was involved in. John Brown, on his way over to his ill-famed death, stopped at a farm run by one of my family members. And my family member was a white guy. He fought for the North in the Civil War when it came out. He also helped establish the Underground Railroad and is credited with saving thousands of Negro lives and getting them out of bondage and into freedom. His nickname after the Civil War was known as Nigger Bill. And they called him that because he loved Negroes, because he helped them so much and he saved them. And so people started calling him Nigger Bill, a white guy. Kind of a confusing term, I guess, for its time, but it was not meant nice. It was an angry term. It was a term used to put him in his place, to make him feel guilty for being a race traitor. But he felt that race wasn't as important as souls. And so he was saving souls. He didn't care if they were white, black, or striped. He tried to talk John Brown out of what he was doing and to use a different path. Well, we know how history went, but he spent a week at that farm on his way to his ill-fated death. My family has its bona fides in things much bigger than any civil rights march. And I'm very proud of it. And I get very angry when I'm called a racist, but you don't cow me because I know my history. I know the people in my family. I know what we're like. We did not raise our children to be racist. Can you say the same of yours? I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I think most black people are raised to be racist, just like most white people used to be, and for the same reasons. And I'm going to tell you that those same reasons are just as stupid and just as wrong. And we're going to have problems in our country as long as both races continue to raise their children like that. As long as both races refuse to have an honest discussion and look at things honestly. As long as people use their race as a political avalanche or a hammer, like Joe Lewis and others. The people who give us will Guam capsize because too many American servicemen are coming on it. The same people who say, like John Lewis, that sharks still swim the trail of the ships that were slavers, that brought slaves to America. Some of the idiotic things this man has said to bait and to foster racial hatred in our country is out there accusing white Tea Party people of spitting on them. Do you remember how CNN showed how one Tea Party member at a Tea Party rally was so crazy they had an AR-15 hanging off of their back? And they showed you an up-close picture of that AR-15 slung on that man's back? somebody else was there taking pictures and realized it was the same picture that he had taken, but he was a little bit further away. And what CNN was talking about, how there were all these gun-toting white guys at Tea Party rallies. You know, I can't remember. I don't think I saw more than 2 the entire time I was there. Most of us have concealed weapons and we don't show it. But when CNN finally got caught with its pants down when Fox News, or I'm sorry, not Fox News, it was either Breitbart or it was Drudge, posted the actual photo, uncropped by liberal Democrats. And it was a black guy at a Tea Party rally carrying an AR-15. Oh my. That's my best Zulu impersonation. Oh my. Because we can't have an honest discussion about race. We can't have an honest discussion about communism in our country. We have to do these things to move forward, to embody a collectivist state. We have to separate those people who are willing to fight and defend it, to preserve the Constitution. We have to be marginalized, which is why they attack us in the way that they do. This is why they created a fake war on women. This is why they create fake racial hatred from Tea Party people. If they'd actually ever been to a Tea Party rally, they would realize that there was absolutely, well, I won't say zero, because you always have some Looney Tune who shows up. But you know what happens? I've been to Tea Party rallies, and I've been there where some knucklehead starts talking like that. And you know what everybody starts doing? They start surrounding him and telling him to leave and trying to escort him out to get him to go, because we don't want him there. We don't want that thinking. That's not what we're about. This isn't a white supremacy club. You want to do that? Fine, go do it. I don't care. Just like I don't care about... I think Black Entertainment Network should be shut down for being racist. Just like I think any organization that does things that are racial specific should be shut down, like the Black Caucus, the Women's Caucus. All these caucuses that are based on sex, race, or religion should be banned, because we're not allowed to recognize race, religion, or sex anymore constitutionally, are we? And yet we have leaders up there who join these groups, and then they legislate based on those group values. And so while we're not allowed to recognize or to live our lives out here like that, they are doing it there. Once again, separating the elitists from the lead. What was it Newt Gingrich told me once? We were at a breakfast in Dallas, and he said something really clever, and I bet he said it more than once, but he said something like, I don't know, something like bipartisanship or compromise or something like that was like 2 wolves and a lamb discussing what they're going to have for dinner. That's the way I feel sometimes, defending the Constitution. Harris Perry says, I'm sorry, I cut it off in the middle, didn't I? Let's see, where did I say that at? Conspiracy prosecute, continence floor. I forget what I said. I stopped in the middle of something, I don't know where it was. Right to levy taxes or make policy. Many GOP elected officials offered nearly secessionist rhetoric from the floor. I'm telling you, I led secessionist rhetoric from this radio. Texas needs to build a northern wall. Forget the southern wall. Let's build a northern wall and separate ourselves from New Mexico all the way to Arkansas. And then you Yankees, and that means everybody from Oklahoma, Arkansas, California, all you Yankees, you just have a nut and do whatever progressive crap you want to do. We'll stay here. We'll have a constitution. We'll live a republic type of life where people are independent and they take care of themselves and they take care of their neighbors and they take care of their own families without the government having to do all these things. And then in about 5 years, we can buy the rest of you guys back for 10 cents on the dollar. That's what I think we ought to be doing. But she is sitting here complaining that congressmen were up there doing secessionist types talking. Well, you know, it was a reason it was happening. Because you went too far, you pushed the Overton window to the far left too fast, too much, too quickly, and people reacted. People were reacting. And if you can't pay attention, if you don't have values, if you don't believe the political system is responsive to you, then what do you do? Right or wrong, the South pulled out of the Union because they felt the political system was no longer responsive to their needs, that the Yankees, that the northern states had ganged up on them and were preventing them. Now, I'm not talking about what they were worried about being prevented from doing, but simply all things political they were worried about, not just slavery. And we're getting that point again. Why in the world? Well, never mind. That's for another show. Many GOP elected officials offered nearly secessionist rhetoric from the floor of the Congress. This was during the debate over health care, she says. They joined as co-conspirators. Excuse me. They joined as co-conspirators with the Tea Party protesters by arguing that this government has no monopoly on legitimacy. The Tea Party says this government has no monopoly on legitimacy. Well, I don't believe this government is legitimate. It is not constitutional. It has not been limited by the Constitution in anything it's done. I have cited case after case on this radio show of constitutional violations. And I mean real ones, not pretend ones like Alex Jones and some of these other nuts has done on their shows. I'm not talking about black helicopters like Joe Biden is accused us of. And well, never mind. I'm talking about actual constitutional violations. Things that even our Supreme Court is incapable of handling. At least some of them. Enough of them. A majority of them. Maybe seditionists like myself are right. Maybe it's time for secession. I really don't want it. Too much was spent preserving this country, putting it back into a union. But Texas is legally able to secede. It's constitutional for us to do it. It's not constitutional for the rest of you. That issue was put to bed with the Civil War. The determination of whether a state can secede or not was decided by blood. And it was decided that you cannot. But part of our treaty as a republic coming into your country was that we could leave it too. We could also divide Texas up into 5 smaller states, something I think we might agree to do. We can make one state Democrat and put all the Democrats in it, like carve it out of Austin and Houston, and shove all the Democrat weenies in there. And then the rest of Texas, we could make 4 states. That would give Congress 8 Republican senators and about 25 or more representatives. That would be a good deal. We could tilt the balance and we could control government and we could scale it back and we could make it constitutional again. She goes on to say that when protesters spit on and scream at duly elected representatives of the United States government, it is more than an act of racism. It is an act of sedition. Now notice she brought race into it. Spitting is not a racial act, no matter what color you are or what you get spit on. And this is something that all Democrats do. Everything is about race to them. You were put into organizations. You were put into groups. Every right you have is a group right. It is a group salvation. We've talked about that before on this program. We've talked about it before. Like I'm spitting in the wind, screaming in a hurricane, and no one's listening. Speaking of no one listening, we're about 1,000 hits lower than we normally are by this time. So I don't think we're going to be able to brag that we've had continual growth for the 9th month, unless you guys find people to listen and send them this way. So either I'm doing something wrong, and I'm prepared to believe that my success is because of you and my failure is because of me. So I must be doing something wrong. We're getting less hits. I don't know if it's because I'm not using the right tags, or if I'm not titling my shows right, or if my content just sucks and I'm a terrible talk show host. I was actually starting to think I might be getting this down with 8 solid months of growth, but like I said, we're about 1,000 below where we were last month. And this is the middle of the month. This is tax day. This is, now you guys know, and if you look at this video when it gets put onto the website, then you can look at me and you'll realize that you have been talking with Santa Claus this whole time. And of course, Christmas is my big day. But this is Barry Sotero's big day. This is Obama's favorite day of the year, tax day. He has never met a tax he didn't like, and so this is the day where it all comes together. Now here's something funny. I heard this the other day, and I haven't been able to check up on it, but I want to. If you're out there and you know these things, let me know what you think about this. But I read somewhere that April the 10th, Texans were done paying taxes. Right? April the 10th. We worked from January the 1st through April the 10th to pay all of our state and local and national taxes. The rest of you will be on there about May 30th. You have 2 more months than we do, basically, of paying taxes and working for government. Think about that. And when you do, pick up the phone, schedule a U-Haul, and move down here. Especially if you're conservative. But if you're tired of paying all these taxes that liberals have imposed, that Republicans have failed to fight, I don't care how you want to word it. Republicans tend not to raise taxes. If they do, then they tend to be progressive Republicans. And remember, the progressives made a conscious effort in the 20s, and they realized if they were going to gain power and to control this country and to shove the Overton window all the way far left, then they would have to have people in both parties. And so those who went into the Republican Party, or the ones they have mentored, which are alive today, the ones that are the new progressive Republicans, they're the ones carrying on the fight. They're the ones who raise taxes. And, you know, I'm talking about things like Mayor Bloomberg is a Republican. I can't stand it. He's a Republican. So when he does these things, you can blame it on Republicans. Except for he's not a Republican. He's a progressive. He belongs in the Democrat Party where all progressives are, right? But they're not all there because a significant portion of them have infiltrated the right. And they pretend to be conservatives. People like Bush are progressive. People like Romney are progressive. People like Boehner, McCarthy, Cantor, McConnell are progressives. And they need to be gone. You need to get rid of those people who voted. I have the 15. Well, I only have 9 minutes, so I can't really get into that. The Texas Senate today did something kind of good. they voted to start drug testing people on welfare. Now, it's over in the House, and we'll see if it survives. I have high hopes that it does. But, I think that's great that they're doing that. So maybe now if you are on there and you're taking welfare money and you fail your drug test, then you're off welfare. Sadly, they've made a provision where your children can stay on it. I think that they should take the whole family off. And if you're on drugs, they should just take your kids from you. Put them in the foster system, put them in an orphanage, and let people adopt them. Weasel Zippers, scouring the bowels of the internet, says that gun control at work in Chicago, 4 killed, 19 wounded in weekend shootings. It's almost like gun control doesn't do anything to stop criminals from using guns to commit crimes, they say. 4 men were killed, at least 19 people wounded in shootings across the city since Friday night. Larry Renault, 28, was shot and killed, pronounced dead. Well, anyway, they go on. Lots of people dying in Chicago. You can get that report on Weasel Zippers or Matt Drudge or other places. Morons. Perhaps if the Boston Marathon had just posted signs saying it was a bomb-free zone, then we wouldn't have had to worry about terrorists bringing their bombs to work. Or Houston should have posted knife-free zones, and made it a knife-free zone on all the Houston colleges so we don't have to worry about morons walking around campus sticking knives into people's necks. Because those kind of laws work, right? This is what our Congress thinks. This is why they're passing more and more draconian laws against our freedoms and our rights. The ones that says thou shalt not infringe, but it's okay if they do it. And I'm telling you, if they believe in what they're doing, if they truly believe in it, then the only legal course of action for them is to put it up for amendment. Amend the Second Amendment. If you want background checks, okay, put it up for amendment. Because the amendment, the Constitution, the Declaration of the Bill of Rights, rather, states that you will not infringe on this right. If you want to infringe on it with background checks, and I'm okay with that, then do it right. Put it up for the people to vote on and amend the Second Amendment to include the language of background checks to make sure the loonies don't do it. I'm okay with this because back in the days of the founding, townships were small. People knew each other. They knew everyone. You knew who didn't belong having weapons, and you didn't let them have it. If some knucklehead retard was in your village, then you made sure that he stayed away from the guns, and you kept him out of his reach, and you didn't give him one. He didn't get a right to carry a weapon because he was, minus incompus? Menace incompus? I can't remember how you say it now, but an incompetent mind. They knew that. They made allowances for it. We live in a population where you don't even know who your next door neighbor is. So there's no way. And if you tell one of the kids in the neighborhood to pull their pants up, you might get shot. So you can't prevent the no-goods from having guns. So we need a police force. We need cops. We need something to prevent the crazies and the criminals and the liberals from having guns. And I say liberals because if you look at most crimes, they're liberals. If you look at all of these mass shootings, they're liberals. And yet, what's the first thing the media does, like in the Boston bombing, like in Benghazi, everywhere, everything, every big event, the first thing out of the media is that conservatives are responsible. We're running out of time. I want to remind everybody that Wednesday I've got a church function that I dearly want to go to, so I'm I am going to record a show tomorrow for Wednesday, and it will be new material. It just won't be live. So I still encourage y'all to come and listen to it. And then Friday, I'm going to the Texas Wesleyan reunion. I haven't been. I think I graduated from there in like 2000, but I can't remember. I did graduate from Texas Wesleyan with a BS, which is appropriate in political science. A BS in political science, Bachelor of Science. And I actually had some very good professors there. A liberal college, but they were great liberals. They were actually liberals of the kind that let you think. Now, I was a handful. I was a kind of obnoxious student who chose to remain conservative in my academic career. And so I took on the role that if I was in their face with conservatism, and I did it enough, that if they failed me, then I would go and make accusations that they did so because I was conservative. And that way I wouldn't have to hide my conservatism. I wouldn't have to just regurgitate what the professor said. And I wouldn't have to sit there and smolder while he made fun of conservatives. I responded to every challenge, every attack, which is why I can sit on this radio and discuss things with you with very few notes or prompts and without my own totus. And it's primarily because of the great professors at Texas Wesleyan University. Now, they never gave me a minute of rest. They were after me just like I was after them, but it was in a good way and an exchange of ideas and the knowledge that we both came at. I mean, the professors learned and I learned. And it wasn't a waste of my time like so many conservatives feel their academic careers are, that they're there to get the certificate, but the knowledge that they get is superfluous. Not so there. If you're in the radio, listening to the radio show, in the hopper I put several pictures. One's supporting the Boston Marathon bombing, and not supporting the bombing, but supporting the people. You know, our prayers are out for them. But there's a picture of a young lady in one of them. And if you look at the words, I don't know if you can blow it up and look at it.
90 seconds.
Woo! Okay. Well, Hal 3000 just came in and told me we got 90 seconds left. That was awful loud. Where were we? I forgot what we were saying. Oh, it's a picture of my daughter from a Hillsdale magazine they sent out talking about how Hillsdale has, you know, we don't get student loans from the federal government at Hillsdale for people whose kids go there. They're all private student.
60 seconds.
Good gravy. I don't know how to turn that down either. Anyway, they're all private student loans that go to Hillsdale. And Hillsdale, as an institution, has one of the highest payback rates by its students, the lowest default rate on student loans. And they put a picture of my daughter in the magazine and made that statement. And so I'm worried that maybe they realize that this is a shot across my bow telling me that I need to make sure I pay my daughter's student loans when she graduates this May. Everybody, I'm the Underground Professor. This has been a lot of fun. It was cathartic for me. I hope you could endure. I hope I didn't bore you. Wednesday, it'll be a good show. Come and listen. I'll be back live Monday, and I love you guys. God bless you. Thanks for listening, and spread the word. Get up the numbers. The numbers are bad. And click on the ads. Bye.
to kill.